What happens when the world's most admired athlete locks eyes with the most controversial royal couple and chooses to walk away? That single moment at the 2025 Baby2Baby Gala wasn't just another awkward celebrity encounter. It was a quiet explosion, one that sent shockwaves through Hollywood and left Meghan Markle's carefully crafted image hanging by a thread. Cameras flashed, whispers erupted, and somewhere in that glittering chaos, Serena Williams finally said the words everyone had been afraid to utter. They're social climbers. But how did it come to this? How did two people once embraced by the world's most powerful circles find themselves begging for a photo op, just to stay relevant? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The night was supposed to be perfect. A star-studded evening at the Pacific Design Center in Los Angeles, flooded with silver gowns, expensive smiles, and Hollywood's most elite mingling under chandeliers that sparkled like 1,000 diamonds. Baby2Baby, the annual charity gala where status and philanthropy collided, had become more than a fundraiser. It was the social event of the year. It wasn't just about giving. It was about being seen giving. And this year, the air carried an extra charge. The cameras weren't just waiting for movie stars. They were waiting for royals. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who had been in quiet PR recovery mode for months, were set to attend after a string of lukewarm public appearances. The Sussex brand was slipping. The Netflix deal had turned to smoke, Spotify had walked away, and their Hollywood allies were fading fast. So when the gala organizers confirmed Serena Williams, Meghan's so-called best friend, would be attending, it felt like a lifeline. Meghan could already see the headlines in her mind. Serena and Meghan reunite for a cause. A single photo could reignite the illusion of power, of belonging, of friendship. But there was a problem. That friendship, if it ever truly existed, was long dead. Serena had been cordial once, patient even. She had attended Meghan's royal wedding in 2018, smiled for the cameras, and said the polite things every celebrity says when asked about royal friends. But beneath the surface, insiders whispered something different, that Serena had grown wary. Wary of the calls that always came with cameras. Wary of the friendship that felt like a transaction. And that wariness turned to distance. Quiet, polite distance. But Meghan doesn't handle distance well. Not when it's public. Not when it's visible. Not when it exposes what she fears most, irrelevance. The night of the Baby2Baby Gala began like any Hollywood fairy tale. Harry and Meghan's SUV rolled up to the red carpet. The paparazzi leaned in. But something was off. The flashes dimmed. The buzz softened. The silence that followed was louder than applause. Harry's jaw tensed. Meghan's smile froze, then wavered, then vanished. The photographers caught it all. What happened next was even more brutal. Someone nearby, an insider, a publicist, maybe even a friend of Serena's, was overheard saying the words that would define the night. They're desperate for attention. Real social climbers. It was the kind of line that echoes. Within minutes, it was being whispered from table to table, from influencer to journalist, from PR rep to tabloid editor. And though Serena herself never repeated it publicly, by the end of the night, everyone in that room had heard it. But let's back up for a moment. Because this wasn't just about one night. This was years in the making. A slow unraveling of a manufactured friendship that began with ambition, blossomed under cameras, and finally died under the weight of exposure. Back when Meghan was still climbing the Hollywood ladder, she often mentioned Serena in interviews. She's been such an inspiration, Meghan would say, her voice soft, her smile perfectly calibrated. Serena, always gracious, would nod in return, offering kind words that carried no promises. But to Meghan, that small exchange became something bigger, a connection she could capitalize on, a name she could attach to her own narrative of power and grace. When the royal wedding happened, Meghan made sure Serena was there, not just as a guest, but as a symbol. It said, "Look who I know. Look how far I've come." But after the ceremony, after the fairy tale began to fade, Meghan's attempts to maintain that image became more transparent. She wanted Serena to appear in her podcast. She wanted joint charity appearances. She wanted cross-branding opportunities that Serena politely declined. Not because of malice, but because Serena understood something Meghan didn't. Authenticity can't be staged. By the time the Baby2Baby Gala rolled around, the distance between them was a canyon. Serena had moved on, focused on motherhood, business, and her post-tennis life. Meghan, on the other hand, was scrambling to stay relevant in an industry that had already begun looking past her. That's why this night mattered so much to Meghan. It wasn't just a gala, it was a chance at redemption. One good photo, one shared smile, one headline that read "Serena and Meghan reunite for charity" could shift the narrative overnight. But the truth is, Hollywood doesn't forget. It just watches. Every social circle Meghan once leaned on, Oprah, Tyler Perry, Gayle King, had grown quieter. The invitations came slower. The collaborations stopped. The warmth faded. The Baby2Baby Gala, a night meant for generosity and unity, became a silent battlefield of perception. And when Serena walked past without a word, Meghan's facade cracked. The mask she'd worn so carefully began to slip. Because in that moment, she realized something terrifying. Serena wasn't ignoring her out of malice. She was ignoring her out of indifference. And that's worse than hatred. As the night unfolded, Meghan tried to recover. She laughed a little louder. She posed a little longer. She held Harry's hand just tightly enough for the cameras to catch it. But the energy was gone. The smiles felt hollow. And in the background, whispers grew. She tried to get in Serena's shot. She was told no. She begged for a quick photo, and Serena refused. Was it true? Did Meghan really ask? Sources differ. Some say her team approached Serena's PR staff, asking if she'd be willing to pose together for old times' sake. Others insist Meghan herself approached Serena near the dessert table, pretending it was a casual moment. But all accounts agree on one thing: Serena said no. The refusal wasn't loud or dramatic. It was graceful, quiet, final. And that, perhaps, made it sting even more. The next morning, gossip sites exploded. Serena snubs Meghan. Cold shoulder at charity gala. Royal couple outshined by tennis legend. Every outlet wanted the scoop. Every fan wanted the footage. And while Meghan's team tried to downplay it, insiders whispered that Harry was furious, not at Serena, but at the situation. The couple had walked into that gala hoping to rebuild their image, to prove they still belonged in the world of elite influence. Instead, they walked out looking smaller than ever. Behind closed doors, Meghan was reportedly shaken. She blamed the press, the event planners, even Harry's lack of presence. But deep down, she knew what had really gone wrong. You can't force authenticity. You can't manufacture belonging. And you can't beg for respect. It's either given or it's gone. The irony, of course, is that Meghan had once claimed Serena was her role model, her confidant. But at the Baby2Baby Gala, the roles reversed. Serena became the quiet embodiment of grace and confidence, while Meghan became a symbol of desperation and disconnection. And as the night drew to a close, something else happened, something no one in the room could have predicted. An audio recording surfaced, faint, barely audible, but enough to ignite the internet. A snippet of conversation that seemed to confirm everything. A woman's voice, calm, unmistakable, saying, "They only reach out when cameras are rolling." Those words would set off a media firestorm. But in that ballroom, under the chandelier glow, all Meghan could think about was the look Serena gave her. Not anger, not pity, just distance. And that was enough to break her. Because for someone who had built her life on image, silence is the worst rejection of all. But what no one knew then was that this was only the beginning. Behind that awkward encounter, behind the glances and the whispers, lay a deeper story, one that stretched back years, filled with ambition, betrayal, and quiet revenge. The Baby2Baby Gala was merely the spark. The real explosion was still to come. And when it did, it would destroy the illusion of friendship that Meghan had spent years selling to the world. Because as one insider later said, Serena didn't cut her off that night. She'd cut her off long ago. The gala just made it public. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. It started, as so many Hollywood fairy tales do, with a smile, a camera, and a carefully crafted story. Meghan Markle once told the world that Serena Williams was her closest friend. She said it in interviews, in documentaries, in glossy magazine profiles that painted her as the woman who had conquered two kingdoms, one royal, one celebrity. To the public, it sounded glamorous. The actress turned duchess and the tennis queen, side by side, two self-made women defying odds and rewriting rules. But behind the sparkle of that narrative, there was something hollow. A friendship that never quite existed beyond red carpets and headlines. When Meghan first met Serena in 2010 at a Super Bowl party, she wasn't yet the Duchess, nor even a household name. She was Rachel Zane from Suits, hustling through auditions and hoping to land a breakout role. Serena was already a legend, 23 Grand Slam titles deep, a cultural icon whose name alone commanded respect. Meghan approached her that night, sources say, not as an equal, but as an admirer. She was warm, charming, eager. She complimented Serena's strength, her confidence, her grace. Serena smiled politely. She'd heard it all before. But to Meghan, that brief exchange meant something. It was the spark she needed to build a connection, one she would later nurture through subtle persistence. Invitations to charity events, friendly messages on Instagram, occasional texts about shared experiences as women of color in the spotlight. Serena would respond occasionally, always graciously but never deeply. To her, Meghan was one of many acquaintances orbiting her world. Still, Meghan was patient. She understood something essential about fame: proximity is power. And if she could be photographed beside someone like Serena, if her name could appear in the same sentence as Williams, then maybe the world would start to see her differently. Over the next few years, Meghan became a student of image. Her lifestyle blog, The Tig, was her testing ground, a carefully curated online diary blending luxury, empowerment, and ambition. She dropped Serena's name sparingly but strategically, like gold dust sprinkled for attention. Serena is the epitome of hard work and success, she wrote in one post, pairing the compliment with a casual mention of our friendship. Except there wasn't one, not yet. Serena's circle was tight. Her real friends were women she'd known for decades: her sister Venus, her coach, her childhood confidants, her husband Alexis Ohanian. Meghan was friendly, yes, but not family. Still, she knew how to create the illusion. And illusions, in Hollywood, are often more powerful than truth. By 2014, Meghan began climbing. Suits had made her recognizable enough to earn invitations to fashion shows and panels. Whenever Serena was in attendance, Meghan made sure she was too. You never know when networking becomes destiny, she told a friend at the time, half joking, half serious. The media started to take notice. A photograph of them together at a New York charity event circulated online. Serena smiled brightly. Meghan leaned in closer than the moment warranted. For Meghan, that single image was gold. Within days, she updated her social media, thanking my friend Serena Williams for her inspiring words tonight. But privately, Serena didn't remember giving any. To those who knew her, Serena's attitude toward Meghan was one of polite distance. She liked her well enough, but she wasn't invested. Yet, in the public narrative Meghan spun, they were suddenly close, sharing advice, sharing struggles, even chatting often. It was harmless, maybe even flattering. Serena didn't correct the record. After all, what was the harm in a friendly actress boosting her own image by association? The harm came later, when that narrative grew legs. When Meghan's relationship with Prince Harry went public, everything changed overnight. Suddenly, the woman who'd once been a supporting actress became global news. Every story needed an angle, every journalist needed a quote, and Meghan needed something that made her seem relatable. So she leaned into the friendship. In one of her first post-engagement interviews, she mentioned Serena again. "She's been such a source of support," Meghan said, smiling softly, the picture of sincerity. It was a clever line, humanizing, strategic, unprovable. Serena, caught off guard by the press attention, responded with her trademark grace. "I'm happy for her. She's always been so nice." And just like that, the myth was cemented. They weren't friends, they were headlines. When the royal wedding came in 2018, Meghan made sure Serena's name was on the guest list. It was a power play, not a sentimental one. To have Serena in St. George's Chapel wasn't about friendship, it was about validation. To the world, it said, "Look how far I've come. Look who celebrates me." Serena attended out of respect, not devotion. She looked stunning, poised, radiant as ever. She smiled for the cameras, waved to fans, and wished the couple well. But later, according to insiders, she confided that she barely knew Meghan personally. "We're not close," she allegedly told a friend. "But I wish her happiness." Still, the media spun it differently. Every outlet ran with the same narrative. Serena Williams, Meghan's best friend, dazzles at royal wedding. It was one of Meghan's greatest victories, the world believing a friendship that wasn't there. For Serena, it was just another photo op. For Meghan, it was confirmation that image could be reality, if repeated enough times. But the problem with illusions is that they demand maintenance. And Meghan, living now in a palace, began to lose control of the story. While she basked in her new royal role, Serena continued her career, breaking records and balancing motherhood with her global brand. The two women's lives diverged sharply. Serena's authenticity, her groundedness, her quiet humor, they didn't blend with Meghan's growing obsession with optics. After the wedding, Meghan reportedly reached out more often. Invitations to tea, suggestions of charity collaborations, friendly texts during tournaments. But Serena's responses were brief. Courteous, always, but brief. She was busy. She had no time for performance friendships. That's when Meghan began to use her name differently. When asked in interviews who she turned to for advice, Meghan often said, "Serena gives great guidance." It was a vague statement, implying closeness without confirming it. And each time she said it, the world believed the connection was alive and deep. Serena rarely corrected her. Why start drama over something so trivial? But it wasn't trivial to Meghan. It was survival. Her entire public persona was built on relationships. Oprah, Tyler Perry, Serena, the Obamas. These weren't just names. They were shields, proof that she belonged among America's cultural elite. Losing those connections meant losing credibility. And that's exactly what began happening. By 2021, cracks appeared. Serena, during an interview, was asked about Meghan's Oprah special. She smiled and said, "I think everyone has to tell their truth," a diplomatic, neutral response. But behind closed doors, sources close to Serena say she was uncomfortable. The truth Meghan was selling didn't match the woman Serena remembered, or barely knew. Over the following years, Meghan's repeated references to their sisterhood began to irritate Serena's camp. "She keeps using Serena's name," one source reportedly said. "It's like free PR." Serena's team quietly asked for distance. Meghan was never publicly rebuked, but the cold shoulder was unmistakable. Invitations stopped coming. Texts went unanswered. And Meghan noticed. When Serena announced her retirement in 2022, Meghan released a podcast episode celebrating her, calling her "my dear friend Serena Williams." It sounded warm, intimate, emotional. But those who listened closely heard something different, a one-sided affection, almost possessive. Serena, ever polite, played along during the recording, but her tone was formal, distant. She talked about family, discipline, and purpose, not Meghan. That podcast would be the last time they publicly interacted. And yet, to Meghan, it wasn't over. She believed she could fix it. That time, persistence, and charm could restore what never truly existed. But by 2024, the illusion had worn thin. Hollywood had changed. Meghan's projects faltered, her invitations dwindled, and whispers spread that she was becoming difficult. That's why the Baby2Baby Gala became her target. It wasn't just about charity, it was about optics. It was where connections were made, where forgotten names became relevant again. And Serena was the crown jewel. To be seen beside her again, even for a moment, could rewrite the narrative. It would tell the world that Meghan was still connected, still influential, still welcome among the icons. But the universe has a cruel sense of irony. Because while Meghan was planning her comeback through a photo op, Serena was planning her quiet withdrawal from that entire world. The tennis legend had turned her focus inward, her family, her daughter Olympia, her ventures. She didn't need validation. She'd outgrown it. When their paths crossed at the gala, it wasn't a collision of equals. It was a mirror moment. One woman grounded in legacy, the other still chasing it. And in that silence between them, in Serena's refusal to pretend, the truth of their friendship was exposed for the world to see. It had never been real. It was a performance, scripted and staged, built on perception. And when the lights dimmed, the act was over. As Meghan left the gala that night, her smile trembling, her hand gripping Harry's arm like a lifeline, one thought haunted her. Why did Serena reject her so coldly? But the answer wasn't about one night. It was about a pattern, years of ambition disguised as connection, of relationships built on need, not trust. And though the world saw only a snub, Serena saw something deeper, a woman trapped by her own creation, unable to live without applause. But that was just the beginning. Because the next chapter wouldn't just expose a fake friendship, it would unravel the quiet betrayal that turned two ambitious women into silent adversaries. And when the truth of what happened at Wimbledon surfaced, the illusion of sisterhood would collapse for good. What came next would leave Meghan humiliated and Serena vindicated. No one saw it coming. Wimbledon, 2019. The air was electric, crisp with English summer and the weight of legacy. Crowds gathered in their finest whites, strawberries and cream in hand, the low hum of polite anticipation spreading across the royal box. Cameras swung toward Meghan instead of Serena. Journalists whispered about her outfit, her jewelry, her smile. Serena noticed. Between serves, glances shot toward the stands, her jaw tightening. It wasn't anger. Serena had weathered pressure far greater, but disappointment. The court was her sanctuary, her cathedral. And now, even here, it felt hijacked by palace politics and celebrity noise. What had been meant as support felt like intrusion. Meghan, oblivious or unwilling to acknowledge the shift, continued to beam at cameras. Every move was deliberate. The way she clapped, the way she crossed her legs, the subtle way she leaned forward when Serena scored a point. It was performance, perfectly timed for lenses trained on her every gesture. And then came the moment that sealed the whispers. A spectator, seated a few rows behind Meghan, tried to take a selfie, not of Meghan, but of herself with the cord in the background. Within seconds, Meghan's security pounced, asking her to delete the photo. The woman, stunned, protested. "I wasn't taking a picture of her." The story spread like wildfire. By the next morning, headlines read, "Meghan's Wimbledon security scolds fan." Comment sections erupted. Words like diva, entitled, and out of touch flooded the internet. Serena's team saw it all. And quietly, so did Serena. Behind the scenes, she expressed her discomfort. It's not her fault entirely. One of her confidants recalled her saying. But every time she comes, the focus shifts. It's not about tennis anymore. Serena wasn't angry. She was sad. She'd spent years building her career on sweat, precision, and integrity. To see her game overshadowed by a friend's photo op was a bitter pill to swallow. Meanwhile, Meghan's team scrambled to control the narrative. Her spokesperson issued a statement claiming she was there purely in a private capacity and not as a royal representative. But that did little to calm the storm. In fact, it fueled another question. If it was a private visit, why the entourage, the seat clearing, the theatrics? By the end of that week, Meghan's supportive friend image had turned into another PR fiasco. And the whispers began. Serena's distancing herself. Serena's team is furious. Meghan made it about her, again. Whether true or not, perception became reality. And perception, in both Hollywood and royalty, is everything. To understand the wound, you need to understand the contrast between the two women. Serena's fame was earned through blood and perseverance. Every trophy she held had been fought for, every headline deserved. Meghan's rise, by contrast, was curated, a patchwork of timing, luck, and optics. Serena, despite her fame, had never sought validation. Meghan, despite her title, seemed to crave it. In the weeks following Wimbledon, Serena quietly began to decline Meghan's invitations. A brunch that had been tentatively planned after the match was canceled. A supposed joint charity event was postponed indefinitely. Meghan, ever persistent, texted politely, then less politely, until she stopped hearing back. Insiders say it wasn't animosity, it was exhaustion. Serena simply didn't want to be part of someone else's PR narrative. She valued authenticity too much to perform friendship for cameras. And then came a subtle but telling move. Serena stopped following Meghan's fan accounts. It wasn't publicized, not at first, but the internet noticed. Within hours, screenshots circulated. Serena unfollows Meghan-related pages. To the public, it seemed like gossip. But in Hollywood circles, that small digital gesture spoke volumes. It was the modern equivalent of closing a door. Meghan, ever conscious of perception, panicked. She had built years of interviews, podcasts, and brand associations around the image of being connected to Serena, the champion, the symbol of female empowerment, the friend who gave her credibility. Without that connection, the narrative weakened. Behind palace walls, even courtiers noticed. The Duchess's friends in America seemed distant lately, one aide allegedly remarked. The tennis player, the talk show host, all quiet. But Meghan wasn't ready to give up. When Serena reached the U.S. Open finals later that year, Meghan made sure to attend again, this time with carefully managed press coverage. She was seated front row, surrounded by celebrity faces, her smile poised and practiced. Yet this time, something was different. Serena didn't look up. Throughout the match, not once did their eyes meet. Not once did Serena glance toward Meghan's box. When she won a point, she celebrated with her team. When she lost one, she looked inward, focused, distant. And the cameras caught it all. Journalists, always hungry for subtext, began writing what fans already suspected. Once close friends, Serena and Meghan appeared distant at U.S. Open. For Meghan, it was devastating. She'd come hoping to be seen as a pillar of support. Instead, she looked like an uninvited observer. Later that evening, Serena was asked about Meghan's attendance during a press conference. Her answer was neutral, almost mechanical. "I'm grateful for everyone who supports me," she said simply. No mention of Meghan. No acknowledgement of the supposed best friend. That was when the curtain truly fell. After the match, Meghan's team reportedly reached out to Serena's camp with a request for a joint photo. Serena's manager declined, saying the athlete was too tired after the loss. But sources say Serena herself made the call, not out of spite, but finality. She didn't want the friendship narrative revived. Because to Serena, the friendship had never been real enough to end. The media, however, couldn't let it go. Gossip columns speculated endlessly about a fallout, about betrayal, about jealousy. But those who knew Serena knew better. She wasn't jealous. She was relieved. Relieved to step out of someone else's drama. Meghan, meanwhile, was spiraling. Each public event without Serena's presence felt like another door closing. The Hollywood elite she once mingled with began to see her differently, not as a rising star, but as a story that had run its course. By 2020, even her attempts to rebrand as a philanthropist couldn't hide the cracks. The palace drama, the royal exits, the Netflix spectacle, everything screamed instability. Serena, ever composed, remained silent. She didn't attack. She didn't defend. She simply withdrew. And in that silence, Meghan lost something more valuable than any royal title: credibility. The irony of it all was that Meghan had once called Serena her role model. In interviews, she spoke about how Serena taught her resilience. Yet now, watching from afar, Meghan realized resilience wasn't something you could borrow. It had to be earned. And the more she chased that validation, through photos, posts, appearances, the more it slipped away. Serena, on the other hand, was thriving. Her retirement announcement was met with reverence, not drama. Her business ventures flourished. Her public appearances radiated peace. Meanwhile, Meghan was trapped in a cycle of reinvention. Every few months, a new project, a new brand, a new promise. But behind it all, the same question lingered. Who was she without borrowed influence? The whispers from Wimbledon had turned into something permanent. Hollywood insiders began referring to her as the climber. Not cruelly, almost clinically. She attaches herself to powerful people, one producer said. Then when it stops working, she moves on. The tragedy wasn't in the label. It was in how predictable it had become. For Serena, Wimbledon had been a turning point. For Meghan, it was the beginning of decline, a slow erosion of trust, reputation, and access. The same cameras that once adored her now watched her with suspicion. And through it all, Serena said nothing. Because sometimes silence speaks louder than any press statement. By the time the Baby2Baby Gala came around years later, the tension between them wasn't fresh. It was fossilized. The smiles were gone. The warmth was gone. All that remained was polite detachment. But the memory of Wimbledon lingered. That day when a simple act of overreach had revealed everything wrong with the so-called friendship. The cameras had caught Meghan clapping for Serena. But the world had caught something else. The faint flicker of discomfort in Serena's eyes. And for those who had been paying attention, that was the moment they knew. The friendship was finished. Still, what no one expected was that the story didn't end on the grass courts of London. Because somewhere between the royal exit and Hollywood exile, Meghan would make one last attempt to pull Serena back into her orbit. And this time, she'd use something far more dangerous than charm. She'd use her own words. And when those private texts surfaced, the world would see exactly how far she was willing to go to keep the illusion alive. But what came next would turn silence into scandal and expose a betrayal that even Serena couldn't ignore. That IT started quietly. No headlines, no leaks, no paparazzi, just a message that pinged into Serena Williams' phone late one night. "Hey you, long time. Miss our talks." It was Meghan Markle. By then, it was early 2022, a year after Meghan and Prince Harry's explosive Oprah interview had torn through the media, leaving behind a trail of fractured relationships and confused loyalties. Meghan's inner circle was shrinking fast. Serena, though publicly polite, had become distant, and Meghan felt it keenly. In her mind, this wasn't just about friendship. It was about narrative control. Because without Serena, the story of independent, powerful women supporting each other, the cornerstone of Meghan's brand, was beginning to crumble. She needed to fix it. She needed her back. The text exchange began innocently enough. A few emojis. A joke about how time flies. Meghan complimented Serena's daughter, Olympia, and slipped in a line about missing their deep chats. But Serena, cautious and seasoned, replied with measured grace. "Always good hearing from you. Things have been busy here. Hope you're doing well." It was polite. Too polite. And Meghan noticed. In her world, tone mattered more than words. That cool neutrality, that distance, it wasn't what she wanted. She wanted warmth, validation, the acknowledgement that she was still part of Serena's orbit. So she pushed. "You've always been one of my rocks," Meghan texted. "You're one of the few who understood what it's like to be judged for being strong, outspoken, and unapologetically yourself." It was flattery, yes, but also bait. She knew Serena valued authenticity, sisterhood, empowerment, all the right buzzwords. But Serena wasn't taking it. "Thanks," she replied. "We've all got our own battles. I've just learned to keep mine off camera." The air in that text thread turned cold. For Serena, it was an honest statement. For Meghan, it was a dagger. Because that single sentence carried an unspoken critique, the very thing Meghan had spent years defending, her obsession with being seen. Still, Meghan persisted. She brought up plans. "We should do something together again," and hinted at collaborating for good. But when she mentioned her upcoming Spotify project, Serena's replies slowed. "Sounds great, but I'm keeping things simple these days," she wrote. Simple. That word again, it wasn't just simplicity Serena was referring to. It was separation. Over the next few weeks, the text trickled. Meghan tried to rekindle the warmth with stories about the kids, her new ventures, even subtle gossip about Hollywood peers. Nothing stuck. Serena responded with short, polite replies, never rude, but always final. And then Meghan made the mistake that would ignite a scandal. She sent a message that wasn't meant for Serena, or at least, that's what she later claimed. It read, "Serena will come around. She always does. She can't stay away when there's press involved." The message was intended for an assistant, but somehow, it went straight to Serena's phone. The damage was instant. For a woman who had spent her entire life fighting for respect, being underestimated, scrutinized, and misrepresented, that one line cut deep. Serena, whose every move had been dissected by tabloids for decades, knew manipulation when she saw it. And to think that someone she'd once defended would accuse her of chasing publicity? That was unforgivable. Hours passed before Serena responded. When she finally did, her text was calm, almost eerie in its restraint. "Please don't involve me in your media plans. I'm proud of what I've built on my own. I hope you find peace." No emojis. No heart. No warmth. And that was it. The friendship, or whatever illusion remained of it, ended with that message. But for Meghan, it wasn't over. She tried to backtrack, to smooth things over. "Oh my gosh, that was meant for my team. Totally misunderstood," she replied within minutes, trying to sound casual, playful. "You know how these phones are, totally my bad." But Serena didn't reply. Days turned into weeks. Meghan's follow-ups. "Hey, checking in. Miss our chats. You'd be proud of the new project I'm working on." When unanswered. And then, one day, they stopped altogether. For a while, Meghan seemed to accept it. She shifted her attention to other ventures, other names, other circles. But behind the scenes, the loss stung more than she ever admitted. Because in Meghan's world, silence isn't just rejection, it's exposure. It means the other person has seen through the performance. But the story didn't end there. Months later, whispers began circulating around Hollywood. Whispers that someone had screenshots, private messages, exchanges between the Duchess of Sussex and one of the world's most respected athletes. At first, nobody believed it. Too risky, too personal. Until one night, a celebrity gossip account known for its uncanny accuracy dropped a blind item. Which royal-adjacent celebrities text to a sports legend show just how transactional her friendships really were. One message even calls the athlete press bait. The internet exploded with guesses. Within hours, the initials MM began trending. Meghan's team moved fast, issuing quiet legal threats and denial statements. Pure fiction, her reps said. There are no leaked messages. But the denial came too late. The screenshots had already started spreading in private group chats, media circles, and influencer DMs. And though names were blurred, context gave it away. Lines like, "You know what to say when asked about the gala. Just smile. It helps both of us." Or, "If you could post that picture, it would really mean a lot for visibility." It was unmistakable. Every message painted a picture of a woman not seeking friendship, but leverage. Every exchange chipped away at the persona Meghan had spent years building. The relatable humanitarian, the victim of media cruelty, the authentic voice of modern womanhood. And somewhere, quietly, Serena's team confirmed what everyone already knew. The texts were real. They didn't leak them. They didn't need to. The truth had already leaked itself. For Serena, the situation was painful but predictable. She wasn't one for public mudslinging. When journalists asked her if she was still close with Meghan, she gave a masterclass in diplomacy. "I wish her the best. We're both focused on family and our own paths." But her tone said everything. For Meghan, the fallout was brutal. The Hollywood press began turning on her. Editors who once fawned over her now described her as calculating. A-list contacts stopped replying. Publicists whispered about how even Serena distanced herself. The damage wasn't just personal, it was structural. Meghan's brand was built on female empowerment and solidarity, yet the texts revealed manipulation and exploitation. Every word she'd sent became evidence against the image she sold. Privately, Meghan was livid. She blamed everyone. The gossip sites, the royal establishment, even her own team for letting this get out. But deep down, she knew the truth. By the time the next year's Baby2Baby Gala rolled around, Meghan's relationship with Hollywood's elite was hanging by a thread. But rather than bow out gracefully, she saw it as an opportunity, a stage for redemption. She believed she could fix it all with one picture. One public smile with Serena. One image to erase months of tension. But there was a problem. Serena didn't want to be part of her story anymore. Those close to Serena say that by then, she had made peace with the situation. She didn't harbor hatred, just boundaries. "She's done pretending," one insider said. "She's learned that silence protects her more than any PR team ever could." Still, Meghan refused to let go. When she learned that Serena would be attending the Baby2Baby Gala that November, she saw her chance. She began dropping hints to mutual acquaintances, casually mentioning how nice it would be to reconnect. Her staff allegedly reached out to the event's organizers, asking to be seated near Serena's table. They weren't. When the seating chart arrived, Meghan and Harry were placed 2 tables away. Serena's team had specifically requested distance. To the public, the night seemed glamorous. To those inside the ballroom, it was icy. Meghan smiled for cameras, but every move Serena made across the room caught her attention. Every laugh, every photo, every interaction. It was like watching the life she wanted but couldn't reclaim. And when Meghan finally made her approach, that moment caught by every lens in the room, it wasn't spontaneous. It was rehearsed. She saw Serena standing with fellow athletes and actresses, laughing easily, her aura commanding but warm. Meghan took Harry's hand, whispered something, and walked over. But the moment Serena turned and met her gaze, the air changed. No smiles. No reunion. Just silence. Those who witnessed it said Serena's body language said it all. A polite nod. Nothing more. A professional boundary drawn in real time. No malice, just finality. And when Meghan attempted small talk, Serena gave short, courteous replies before turning back to her group. For Meghan, it was devastating. The same cameras she'd counted on to rebuild her image caught her rejection instead. And then, As if the universe had a cruel sense of timing, the story broke again. Someone from the gala, an anonymous source, leaked that Serena had been overheard referring to Meghan and Harry as social climbers. The phrase was brutal, precise, and instantly viral. By morning, it was everywhere. But what most people didn't know was that it all started with that single message, that one accidental text years before. The spark that turned friendship into frost. Because from that moment forward, Serena wasn't angry. She was finished. And as the dust settled from the Baby2Baby Gala, Meghan's PR team scrambled to suppress yet another headline, one that threatened to end the last of her credibility. Serena Williams distances herself from Meghan Markle after leaked texts expose manipulation. But the real story was just beginning. Because in the weeks that followed, someone would come forward with more than screenshots. They'd come forward with recordings. And those tapes would prove that the truth was even uglier than anyone imagined. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming to be why the time Netflix cameras rolled into Montecito. Meghan Markle was no longer the royal renegade who had captivated the world. She was a brand, one fighting for survival. The cracks in her fairy tale were widening, and for the first time, she couldn't control the narrative. But there was one thing she knew how to do better than anyone: reinvent herself in front of a lens. And this time, she had her sights set on something, or someone, that could resurrect her crumbling image: Serena Williams. The Netflix docuseries Harry and Meghan had been Meghan's biggest gamble yet. A 6-part spectacle of emotion, trauma, and truth. It was meant to be her ultimate redemption story, the chance to tell her side once and for all. But after the first episodes dropped, the response wasn't what she expected. Critics called it self-indulgent. Viewers complained it was more performance than revelation. Even sympathetic journalists began to notice the pattern. Every segment centered not on empathy, but image. Still, Meghan wasn't ready to admit defeat. She believed the series needed something more, something human, something powerful, something that would silence the skeptics. That's when she brought up the idea of the Serena episode. It was late 2022, deep into post-production. Meghan was sitting in her Montecito living room, surrounded by candles, half-empty teacups, and laptops open to Netflix notes. Her creative director, a well-known Hollywood producer, leaned forward and asked the question that had been haunting the project. "What's missing, Meg? What's the heart of it?" Meghan didn't hesitate. "Serena," she said. "She's always been my rock. We've been through the same scrutiny, the same double standards. If we tell that story, it'll remind people who I really am." It sounded perfect on paper. The Duchess and the tennis queen, two powerful women of color facing down the system together. It was redemption wrapped in celebrity gold. There was only one problem. Serena wasn't interested. Netflix executives loved the pitch. They saw dollar signs, headlines, Emmy potential. They immediately began reaching out to Serena's management, dangling the idea of a one-time sit-down where the two women could reflect on their shared journey. They promised sensitivity, respect, control. Serena's team declined within hours. Politely, but firmly. "Serena's focusing on family right now," the email read. "She appreciates the thought, but she's not available for filming." For most people, that would have been the end of it. But Meghan wasn't most people. To her, Serena's no wasn't final. It was a challenge. "She's just protecting her schedule," Meghan told her staff. "Once she sees the vision, she'll understand." Over the next few weeks, Meghan doubled down. She sent personalized notes, called mutual friends, even asked her old PR advisor to float the idea to Serena's husband, Alexis Ohanian, hoping a softer route might work. Nothing. Serena's silence was deafening. Inside Netflix, frustration grew. Without a strong emotional anchor, Meghan's narrative was beginning to look repetitive, another round of grievances without the emotional payoff audiences craved. One executive reportedly told a colleague, "If Serena doesn't come on board, we've got no fresh angle. Viewers are tuning out." Meghan, sensing the pressure, made a risky decision. She decided to include Serena anyway. Not physically, but narratively. The revised episode outline included archival footage, personal letters, and unseen moments of Serena and Meghan's journey through friendship. It was a masterstroke of manipulation, creating the illusion of intimacy without actual consent. When early cuts of the episode circulated internally, producers were stunned. Meghan's narration painted a portrait of sisterhood and solidarity that had long ceased to exist. "She was there for me when others weren't," Meghan said, voice soft, cinematic. "When I doubted myself, she reminded me that strength is quiet, that you don't need to shout to be heard." It was emotional, perfectly delivered, and completely misleading, because by then, Serena hadn't spoken to her in over a year. When word reached Serena's team that she was being featured, they were livid. Her publicist contacted Netflix immediately, warning them to remove any implication of endorsement. "Serena is not affiliated with this production," the email read bluntly. The response from Netflix's legal department was cautious. They assured Serena's team that no unauthorized footage would be used. But the damage was done. Hollywood insiders began whispering again that Meghan had overstepped, that she was using Serena's name to sell empathy. And this time, Serena didn't stay silent. During a brief interview promoting one of her fashion ventures, a reporter casually mentioned the Netflix series. "Were you part of Meghan's documentary?" she asked. Serena smiled, that calm, knowing smile of someone who's learned the art of restraint. "No," she said simply. "I'm happy doing my own projects these days." It was subtle, polite, devastating. That single sentence, 5 words, no drama, told the world everything it needed to know. And Meghan knew it too. She called it betrayal. Her inner circle called it brand damage. Her critics called it karma. Behind the scenes, Meghan spiraled. She reportedly demanded edits to the episode, asking for certain scenes to be reframed to make her appear more self-reliant. Netflix executives pushed back, insisting they'd already spent millions on the current narrative arc. The tension reached a boiling point. At one production meeting, Meghan allegedly snapped, "If Serena wants to pretend she didn't help me, fine, but I won't be erased from her story either." The room went silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Meghan wasn't just trying to reclaim her image, she was rewriting reality. When the final version of the series aired, the Serena segment was still there, though slightly softened. A montage of old photos, a voiceover about friendship and resilience, and a single line that raised eyebrows everywhere. "She taught me that true strength sometimes means walking away." To casual viewers, it sounded profound. To insiders, it sounded ironic. Because that's exactly what Serena had done, she'd walked away. The internet pounced. Fans began dissecting every line, comparing it with past interviews, timelines, and quotes. It didn't take long for Reddit threads, gossip blogs, and entertainment journalists to piece it together. The so-called Serena tribute wasn't tribute at all. It was manipulation. And once again, the backlash came fast. "Serena didn't approve this," one headline read. "Meghan's friendship episode sparks controversy." Public sympathy evaporated. What was meant to humanize her turned into another PR catastrophe. Even Netflix executives privately admitted they'd underestimated the fallout. But what hurt Meghan most wasn't the headlines. It was the silence. Serena didn't text her, didn't call, didn't even acknowledge the show. It was as if Meghan didn't exist. And for someone who lived and breathed visibility, that kind of invisibility was unbearable. In private, she ranted to friends that Serena had used her, that Serena had benefited from their friendship, not the other way around. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. The world didn't see Serena through Meghan's lens. The world saw Meghan through Serena's absence. That's when the idea of reclaiming the narrative transformed into something darker. If she couldn't bring Serena back, she'd show the world she didn't need her. Her next moves were deliberate. Meghan began reaching out to other high-profile women, actresses, activists, CEOs, framing herself as the connector, the mentor, the woman who uplifts other women. It was a calculated pivot meant to fill the void Serena left. But no matter how many panels she joined or causes she endorsed, the shadow of that failed friendship lingered. Every time her name appeared next to Serena's online, the contrast was brutal. One symbolized authenticity, the other ambition. And then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife, Netflix themselves quietly began discussing a new documentary idea, one centered on Serena's retirement, legacy, and motherhood. Meghan wasn't involved, not even consulted. The same platform that once paid her millions was now building a series around the very woman she had tried to use as her emotional lifeline. It was poetic justice, and Meghan knew it. She tried to downplay it in interviews, saying things like, We're all telling our own stories. But privately, she was furious. The project was everything she had wanted her own series to be: powerful, admired, universal. And when the teaser trailer dropped, the first words Serena said echoed like a warning shot. I learned that you can't control how people see you. You can only control what you give them to see. It was elegant, pointed, and for anyone paying attention, unmistakably aimed. By that point, Meghan had lost more than a friend. She'd lost her mirror. Serena had once reflected what Meghan wanted to be: strength, grace, respect earned through work, not words. But now that reflection was gone, replaced by silence and subtle defiance. And yet, even then, Meghan wasn't finished. The Baby2Baby Gala was approaching, and she saw it as a chance to rewrite the story one last time. If we're in the same room again, she told an aide, the press will eat it up. They'll think we've reconciled. It's perfect optics. Perfect optics. That was the phrase her team heard most often. But optics can't hide truth, not forever. Because when that night finally came, and the cameras caught her reaching out for Serena one more time, all the old wounds, the texts, the Netflix manipulation, it all came flooding back. And for the first time, even Meghan seemed to realize something that Serena had learned long ago. You can't edit authenticity. You can't script friendship. And when you try, the world sees through it. But what Meghan didn't know that night, as the flashes blinded her and Serena turned away, was that someone else in the room had captured everything. A private recording, a few whispered words, a conversation that would soon leak. And when it did, it wouldn't just end her friendship with Serena, it would unravel the last thread of her Hollywood credibility. Because that recording would expose a truth darker than anyone imagined. And no one saw it coming. By the time the invitations for the 2025 Baby2Baby Gala went out, Los Angeles was already humming with anticipation. It was the kind of night where A-listers polished their reputations as much as their diamonds. Every table represented a pecking order, every photo a statement of relevance. But for Meghan Markle, this wasn't just another red carpet event. It was her last shot at redemption. The invitation arrived in a creamy white envelope embossed with gold lettering. Elegant, exclusive, the kind of stationery that whispered status before it was even opened. Inside, the words glistened. You are cordially invited to the 2025 Baby2Baby Gala, honoring Hollywood's most generous hearts. For Meghan, the timing couldn't have been better or worse. Her Netflix follow-up series had been shelved indefinitely, her podcast quietly removed from Spotify's priority lineup, and her public image was in free fall after months of unflattering headlines. Once the world's most discussed woman, she had become Hollywood's ghost, recognized, but avoided. The Baby2Baby Gala, though, offered something powerful: proximity. This was no ordinary event. Over the years, Baby2Baby had transformed from a charitable gala into Hollywood's social coliseum, a place where reputations could be revived with one photo, one speech, one smile. Meghan knew that. She'd attended before, years ago, when her name still carried that royal luster. But now, she wasn't the Duchess everyone admired. She was the woman they whispered about. And yet, when that invitation arrived, she saw not risk, but opportunity. Harry, ever the reluctant participant in her public strategies, was skeptical. Meg, he said, standing by the window of their Montecito living room. Maybe we sit this one out. Keep things quiet. Let the press die down. Meghan's eyes flashed. Quiet wasn't her language. Quiet meant forgotten. Harry, she said firmly, this isn't about press. It's about showing we still belong. People need to see us among our peers again. This is how we reset the narrative. Harry didn't argue, but his silence spoke volumes. He'd seen this pattern before. The rehearsed lines, the determined smile, the unrelenting hunger for the next perfect moment. And then, she said it, the line that made him sigh in defeat. Serena will be there. It wasn't just an observation. It was the strategy. To Meghan, that one detail changed everything. After months of being publicly snubbed, after the Netflix fallout, the cold shoulders, and the gossip, this was her chance to rewrite history, to show the world that the friendship was fine, that everything was taken out of context. All she needed was one photo, one smile, one illusion. And so, she set her plan in motion. First came the calls, subtle, probing, strategic. Her assistant reached out to the Baby2Baby organizers under the guise of confirming attendance. A polite question followed. Would Meghan and Serena happen to be seated near one another this year? The answer came back crisp and diplomatic. Seating arrangements have not yet been finalized. In Hollywood speak, that meant no. Meghan wasn't deterred. She had other ways. Over the next week, her team began quietly orchestrating what they called visibility restoration. Small charity appearances, selective leaks to tabloids about her, renewed focus on family philanthropy, and even a few strategically placed photos of her shopping with a well-known designer who was rumored to be dressing her for the gala. It was all part of the build-up, to make her appearance feel inevitable, even triumphant. Behind closed doors, though, the real conversations were about Serena. One staffer asked the question everyone was thinking. What if she ignores you again? Meghan smiled, that tight, controlled smile that said she'd already planned for every scenario. Then I'll make sure no one can tell. And that was the thing about Meghan. She never walked into a room without a script. In the weeks leading up to the gala, the tension grew. Paparazzi began speculating whether Serena and Meghan would reunite for the first time since the Netflix fallout. Bloggers dissected every move, every outfit, every whisper. Serena, as always, remained silent. Her silence made Meghan's efforts louder. In private, Meghan rehearsed her lines. Casual, warm, perfectly unbothered. Serena, it's been too long. We should catch up soon. Simple, polished, safe for cameras. Harry watched her practice in the mirror, uneasy. Do you think she even wants to talk to you? He asked. Meghan didn't look up. She will, she said flatly. They always do when it's public. But this time, Meghan was wrong. Because what she didn't know was that Serena's team had already made their own preparations. A week before the gala, Serena's publicist sent a quiet note to the organizers. It was brief, professional, and unmistakable. Please ensure Ms. Williams is seated away from the Sussexes. She wishes to avoid unnecessary media speculation. The request was honored immediately. When Meghan's assistant called again to confirm seating, the polite reply came. You and Prince Harry will be seated near the stage, alongside other distinguished guests. Translation, you're not at Serena's table. But still, Meghan refused to believe the door was closed. She began texting mutual acquaintances, casually dropping hints. I heard Serena's doing something amazing with Nike, she'd say. Maybe I'll congratulate her in person. The tone was breezy, but the intent was obvious. She was planting the narrative. When the tabloids inevitably caught wind of the seating plan, it would look like she had sought reconnection, not rejection. Then came the wardrobe decision, and for Meghan, wardrobe was strategy.